Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm David Sussman, your personal tour guide here in the land of Israel. And in today's episode, we're going to discover the headwaters of the Jordan River. The Jordan River runs approximately 156 miles or 220 kilometers. It's significant both in Judaism as well as Christianity. In Judaism, it's the site where the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and into the Promised Land after being enslaved by the Egyptians in the book of Exodus. For Christians, they believe it's here that John the Baptist baptized Jesus. Today, the Jordan River is Israel's second largest supply of fresh water, only behind desalinated Mediterranean seawater. However, in the early years before desalination, the Jordan River was Israel's lifeline. Today, with the peace treaty that we have with the nation of Jordan, Israel provides to them 50 million cubics of water every year. And this has taken a mighty strain on the Jordan River. By the time it reaches its endpoint, which is the Dead Sea, it's merely a trickle of water. In order to combat this, Israel wants to desalinate water and pump it to Jordan rather than taking it from the Jordan River. In today's episode, we are going to discover the headwaters of the Jordan as well as the sites and activities that surround them. The Tel Dan Nature Reserve. It's one of the few places in Israel where one can amble through a wild, natural forest. The thick canopy here gives this mysterious glow with the chirping birds and pools of flowing water. It's in striking contrast to the rest of the arid climate that's found here in Israel. In addition to the abundant amount of hiking trails here and little nooks that people can sit down and enjoy the beautiful nature here, it also has an abundant amount of biblical archaeology that dates back to the First Temple period. But before we visit those ruins, let's go discover one of the unique industries that's located here on the banks of the Dan River. Roughly 35 years ago, the Avishai family saw that the waters of the Dan River was a perfect environment to raise river trout. Today, they raise thousands of these fish, which is sold domestically here in Israel. However, about 20 years ago, they began to raise sturgeon in order to collect its highly coveted eggs to create black caviar, which is sold to some of the finest restaurants around the world. In addition, they also have one of the nicest restaurants here in the north. We're going to head back here tonight in order to experience the ambiance in this most incredibly unique restaurants.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
One of the darkest periods in Israeli history is when the 12 tribes of Israel became divided. It happened during the First Temple period at the end of the rule of King Solomon. You had the southern 2 tribes led by Judah, who retained control of Jerusalem and the Holy Temple. The northern 10 tribes was led by King Jeroboam. He built for himself a major city here in Dan. The fortifications of the city was refortified by King Ahab, who was an extremely wealthy king who built the walls that you can see behind me now. It tells us in the Bible, in the book of Kings, that the king would sit in the gates of the city along with the elders and judges. Well, archaeologists here have uncovered an area which is believed to be the spot in which the king's throne would have sat right inside the city gates, along with a bench where the elders and judges would have sat. It's amazing when you come here to Tel Dan, you actually see the Bible come to life. The fortifications here at Tel Dan were massive. The walls alone rose up to 45 feet. At the base, the walls were 180 feet wide. Still, with these massive fortifications, Tel Dan could not stand the wrath of the Assyrian army, whom arrived here in the year 732 BCE and destroyed the city and conquered the entire northern 10 tribes. The Assyrians took most of the population here and sent them off into an exile. Those Jews would become known as the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Then, in order to maintain control of this area, the Assyrians brought in people from other nations that they conquered. These foreign people intermingled with the Jews who still remained here in the north, and a new people were born from this marriage, who will be known as the Samaritans. Come with me as we explore more of Tel Dan. Back in the early 1990s, when archaeologists were still excavating here at Tel Dan, biblical archaeologists were divided into 2 camps. You had the minimalists and the maximalists. The minimalists didn't believe in the existence of King David or King Solomon, whereas the maximalists believed all the stories of the Hebrew Bible. Well, in the 1990s, archaeologists discovered right where I'm standing a stone stela, which is today on display at the Israel Museum, that was written by the king in Damascus in the 8th century BCE, just a mere 100 years after King David ruled in Jerusalem, that said, "I have defeated the king of Judah from the house of David." It's incredible how in the last 30 years, archaeologists have discovered so much here in the land of Israel, the land of the Bible, that proves the historical accuracy of our Holy Scripture. Come with me as we discover more. You know, I'm always filled with mixed emotions when I come to this particular place here in Tel Dan. On one side, I am always ecstatic when we have archaeological evidence that proves the Hebrew Scriptures. And here we have archaeological evidence showing us the story which we can read in the first book of Kings, where Jeroboam, the first king of the northern 10 tribes, in trying to prevent his people from visiting Jerusalem, will build a temple here dedicated to the god Baal, complete with a golden calf and all. Behind me, you can see the remnants of the original altar, along with an illustration of how it looked like nearly 2,900 years ago. And where I'm standing now is a platform on which the golden calf stood. So again, on one hand, here we have archaeological evidence, once again proving the historical accuracy of the Hebrew Scripture. But on the other hand, here's the northern 10 tribes of Israel falling victim to idol worship, which will be the spiritual reason for their physical ending at the hands of the Assyrians in the year 732 BCE. Another sensational find here at Tel Dan is the mud brick gate you can see behind me, which archaeologists have dated back to the 18th century BCE, which is the time period of Abraham, our forefather. If you read in the book of Genesis, it mentions how Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, was captured. Abraham then takes 318 of his best men and he chases the culprits all the way to the city of Dan, which at the time was known as Laish, which means that Abraham arrived to the city gate right here and walked under that arch. But how do mud bricks survive 3,800 years? Well, archaeologists have discovered that the residents of this area purposefully covered over the gate. Why? We don't know. But this is the reason why it has survived all these years. Another interesting fact about this gate is that it's an arch. Up until this point, archaeologists believed it was the Romans who invented the arch. But here we have a mud brick arch that dates back nearly 2,000 years before the Roman Empire even existed.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
The area of the Banya Springs was turned into a national park and nature reserve in the late 1960s due to the abundant amount of ruins that archaeologists have discovered here that date back all the way to the Hellenistic period, roughly 2,200 years ago. The Banya Springs and River collects its water from Mount Hermon and provides the Jordan with 20% of all of its water. There are impressive hiking trails here that lead to one of the most iconic waterfalls in all of Israel. Let's now check out that waterfall before heading to the archaeological excavations. There are several ways to access the Banyas waterfall. There's a trail that goes from the springs itself, which takes roughly about 2 hours, or the most direct route, which only takes about 5 minutes. However, the most popular route, a 25-minute hike, which is easy for adults, kids, and even the elderly is the suspended bridge that I'm on right now, which is built right above the river, giving you incredible views of this majestic waterway. Let's now hike the path and head towards the waterfall. We finally arrived here to the Banyas waterfall, and even though it's not the highest waterfall in Israel, it is the most voluminous one. After the water cascades down, it enters this steep canyon which runs for roughly about 2.5 miles. And due to the steep incline, there's an extremely strong current here with lots of smaller waterfalls and pools. Once it emerges into the Hula Valley, you have this narrow belt of various trees before you see the cultivated fields of the Hula. About 7 miles into the Hula Valley, the Banyas River joins together with the Dan River, which will eventually flow into the Jordan. Let's now explore some of the ruins here in Banyas. The origins of Banyas begin in the Hellenistic period, when Alexander the Great conquers the land of Israel in 332 BCE. After his untimely death, his empire is divided into 12 independent kingdoms. You had the Ptolemies ruling in the south in Egypt, and the Seleucids ruling in the north from Damascus. Well, in 198 BCE, Antiochus, the same Antiochus family who the Jews will rebel against during the story of Hanukkah, defeats the Ptolemies here in Banyas, and he builds a cultic center of worship where they prayed and worshiped the deity Pan, who was the god of shepherding, who lived in the forest and in the caves and in the springs, all of which you can find here in Banyas. In the 1st century BCE, the Roman Emperor Augustus gives the area of Banyas to the domain of King Herod, who wants to honor his great benefactor, and so he builds for him a massive temple in his honor. Only a few of the ruins remain. Some of the foundations, as well as the niches in the wall you can see behind me. And inside those niches were statues of Augustus himself, as well as his family. After the death of King Herod, his kingdom was divided up amongst his 3 sons. Here in the north, including Banyas, it was given over to his son Philip. And Philip, just like his father, wants to honor Augustus. So he builds a city right here, which will be known as Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea to honor the Caesars of Rome, and Philippi to honor himself. After exploring the archaeological site of Banyas and the biblical site of Tel Dan, we're now going to cool ourselves off on the Jordan River with the Jordan River Rafting Company located just outside of Kibbutz Gedot. If you want to experience the river by boat, they offer 2 options. The action-packed, adrenaline-filled whitewater rafting that takes 4.5 hours, or the more family-oriented on calmer waters that takes roughly about 1.5 hours. It offers beautiful views of the valley and the wildlife in this region. They also have an option for those that don't want to get wet. You can go Jeep touring or ATV touring on the banks of the Jordan River. But that's not all. They also have a challenge course where you can go on a rock wall or enjoy zip lining as well as paintball. And after all of that adventure, you're sure to be feeling hungry. So they have a full-service restaurant as well as a large picnic ground located underneath these huge eucalyptus trees that offers incredible shade in the summertime. Now let's get ready as we begin our Jordan River adventure.
There are moments in life that define you and leave you forever transformed. Like a once-in-a-lifetime journey to the source of your faith. Walk in the steps of Jesus and experience history beyond its words. Sail the ancient Sea of Galilee to the holy shores of the River Jordan. Your journey begins here.
To round off a fantastic day traveling through the headwaters of the Jordan River, a perfect place to stay is on Kibbutz Snir. The kibbutz is a relatively young kibbutz, established in 1968. Only a year after the Six-Day War, it is positioned right along the border of the Upper Galilee and the Golan Heights. Located here on the kibbutz is the Snir Boutique Village, offering rooms for couples and families alike. 9 of the 22 rooms are positioned on a cliff with majestic views to the south and the Hula Valley. But the kibbutz offers views in all 4 directions. To our west, you have the Naphtali Heights, and to the north, Lebanon. And to the east, you have Mount Hermon and the Golan Heights. But the best part about staying here on Kibbutz Snir is the grounds themselves. They offer picnic areas, a pool, and a full-service restaurant that offers amazing breakfast as well as dinner. And if you're into hiking, you can literally walk out of your own room and hike through the private tributaries that will lead to the Banyas River and, of course, the nature reserve itself and the Banyas Falls. So if you plan on staying here in the northern part of Israel, in the Hula Valley by the headwaters of the Jordan River, stay at the Boutique Village on Snir Kibbutz. We've returned here to Dag al-Adan to enjoy the amazing atmosphere of this unique establishment, located right on the banks of the Dan River. In fact, they even have streams winding throughout the entire restaurant. And as you can see, they serve a ton of homemade Mediterranean salads, fresh baked pita, and some of the best lemonade I've had anywhere in Israel. But we've come here for the fish. They have sea bass from the Mediterranean, Norwegian salmon, but they're most famous for is their river trout, which we learned about earlier. You can have it cooked in a variety of ways: grilled, baked, fried, and even smoked. So I'm going to sit back and enjoy this amazing meal, but please stay tuned. Join us next time on Land of the Bible as we discover a period of time known as the British Mandate, which began in 1917 after they conquered this area from the Turkish all the way to Israel's independence in 1948. What an awesome day it has been, rafting down the Jordan River, learning about its headwaters, and of course, discovering the archaeological excavations at Tel Dan and Banyas. Thank you for watching Land of the Bible. And remember, I'm David Sussman, your personal tour guide here in the land of Israel. Make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and land of the Bible.